Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of history about the Belcher stone, a little more in detail. First of all, my dad wrote a book called The Seers and Seer Stones, and in the Seers and Seer Stones book, he actually was really quite funny. He went to get different pictures at a bank, and it was in Salt Lake City, and he got there, and all these people started bringing in their different seer stones. There's this one, which was the Edwin Rushton stone. It's on the bottom, and that was at the bank. And then there were about 4 or 5 others that were seer stones that were brought in. This is at a museum, and this was Brigham Young's seer stone that he used. He actually used this more as a protective stone. And then this is the one we're going to talk about today, and this is called the Belcher stone. It was actually purchased by Joseph Smith, and then it was by a guy named Belcher, and so Joseph Smith had brought that stone and used it, and several people knew about it. And what happened was, at the time Joseph was killed, there was a gentleman named Philo Dibble. Now, Philo Dibble was the one that made the death mask of Joseph and Hiram Smith. And Philo, not wanting to have this seer stone disappear, he ran up and got it off of the mantle and brought it down, and decided to bring it to Salt Lake City. So the reason why he didn't want the dark side to get it was because the dark side and the light side can use seer stones for both directions. One story was that Joseph had placed the plates under a mantle, and and then the Lord told him to quickly get the plates and move them away. And then a mob came, busted in, went over there to the fireplace, tore it all up and everything, and then left. And he went back and asked the Lord, how did they know, about where this was? And he said, because there's an evil woman who has a seer stone, and that's how she found your thing. So it can be used for both good and evil.
And that woman, she actually let Joseph Smith at the beginning use her seer stones.
Yeah, which is quite unique to see how this trade work goes back and forth. Joseph, also in my dad's book, Seers and Seer Stone, there's these 2 stones that were brought in, and they were called the Shemezer stones. The Shemezer stones, they would say certain words, and they would activate these, and they'd light up. And Joseph looked in them and said, these are the best, clearest seer stones I've ever seen. And he says, however, they're dedicated to Satan. Take them out and destroy them. And so they took him out and destroyed him. And I thought about that one day, because he was using the Urim and Thummim, and yet the Shemezer stones were clearer than that's pretty crazy. The Belcher stone it's shown in different ones. This is a book that I think is a pretty valid book on Joseph Smith's seer stones. And this one was, there's 3 that they described. One was kind of like a crystal. And then there was the one that was the newspaper article that talked about the brown stone or the chocolate stone. This is the church article right here, and that describes what the seer stone was and what it looked like. And it's very interesting. That was just recently done, and a lot of people. Now, this is a little different than my dad described the stone, because this stone was actually on Joseph Fielding Smith's desk, and my dad tried to take a picture of it, and Joseph Fielding's wife didn't want that sacred stone taken a picture of, so he didn't get a chance to take a picture of it. But he called it more of a speckled brown stone. They called it a chocolate chip stone. So we don't know whether that's exactly it or not. That's a little better close-up of the picture of how they announced that stone and what it looked like. And the seership of how that worked. So in the book itself, this one, it actually shows the Joseph Smith's green So this had the Belcher stone had kind of a chapter on Joseph Smith's green and Nauvoo stones and what they were. And this, of course, is the picture of the goose egg with the Belcher stone and what it looked like, which actively worked with me. I can verify from personal experience that stone worked and that I saw many things in it. And so, as I've described in other things, there's two types of revelation. There's an open vision, an open type, and then they call it visions of the mind, which is sometimes where you see things in your mind's eye, and your mind's eye will formulate it or see things and how that works. And so, so with the Belcher stone, I'll tell a little bit about Seer stones. So this is one that I have used just to see basic things in my mind's eye. It fits my hand very well, and almost any stone can work. I taught a class where I would tell people, okay, so just close your eyes and imagine a white elephant, and they would kind of imagine the white elephant, and then I say, okay, now have a lion come and stand next to it, and they'd do that, and then I said, okay, have the lion jump over the thing, and or the elephant. And so they started to see things in visionary state within their mind's eye, and that's how this works. And so I would close my eyes, or some people can keep their eyes open, and I'd usually do it in my left hand. And in fact, most stones, if they keep them in your left hand or right, depending on the hand that works with you, they'll start to kind of warm up. You'll feel kind of a warmer if they're attuned to you. And so I could stop and sit down, and somebody would say, do you know what happened to so-and-so on this date? One time it was kind of a funny thing because Elizabeth Smart, they were trying to figure out where she was, and I had a friend call me, and I ran in, I was at work, and I ran in and grabbed a stone and just sat down and just kind of sat and looked, and I saw her underneath like a culvert, or underneath where water was going through like a bridge, and then I says, well, did you report anything? So I called it in, nothing happened, I don't think that was a whole spoof anyway. And so then later, he called me back years later, and they were telling where Elizabeth Smart was, and he had actually in his diary wrote down this, where I said it was the date that it happened. And sure enough, she was underneath a culvert or underneath a bridge. That's where she was hiding, because they were using heat sensing radar that day. And so they put her underneath where it was cool and they couldn't really find her. So that's kind of how that works with Seer stones. And so so you can use any stone, and it works very well if you just find one that attunes to you. And I will tell you that I don't work too well with crystals. It's like too many voices or too many things. There's something about crystals that are a little bit weird for me. But just a natural stone, which is what the Belcher stone was, and the others, the Rushton stone was kind of more of a glass. But for some reason, that's how these work. And I've talked to many people who have these type of gifts. I lost one time, and a girl, I call it, that I trained. She was Native American, and she actually located mine. She knew where it was. It got thrown in my rock collection. So, so that's kind of the history of the Belcher stone and where it went. And
Well, I'm kind of interested in, let's say somebody has a bad heart, and they use one of these Seer stones, and they receive a revelation to bring harm to someone or do wrong. What's to stop that from happening? Or would that just not be the Seer stone? That would just be their own internal dialogue.
it could be their own eternal dialogue, or something that that could even be something that's brought up, a dark something in them, wanting to do that or whatever. I haven't ever seen that dialogue, but it could happen. Most people see things that they don't recognize. Why would I see a tree with a this, or why was that part of the whole program? It doesn't make sense at the time. but later things can become more clear. And most of the people that I work with that are pretty trained in this or get to where they know what they're doing, you can ask them questions and then they will know a little bit more about what's happened with that.
And this isn't just for LDS people. This could be
no.
for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the people I've worked with are not LDS.
Do you feel that this could be used in something like remote viewing or astral projecting?
This is actually the beginning stages of that. And so, like, there were times when I didn't have a seer stone. It's kind of a crutch, or it's something that helps because this is earthy material. The earth holds, or as we believe, it holds the history of the earth, or it holds history. And as you start studying some of the crystalline type stuff that computers work with, that could be very easily, we don't even know how that all works in the higher realm. But yeah, you can use seer stones very accurately. And once you start seeing things in your mind's eye, you just pray about it. Where did I put that knife? And then things can, and that's where I as I was using the seer stone, one time I was in the desert, I leaned back, and my knife, I had this pouch like this, and the knife fell out, and I was like, oh man, that was like $100 knife. It's a lot of money for a kid, So I was up around the corner, I just knelt down and prayed, and in my mind's eye, I saw me leaning and that falling down. And I thought, oh, that's where it is. So I went back to the tree, and sure enough, there was my knife sitting right there.
Now, is there anything that won't be answered if you use a seer stone, like lottery numbers or things for, selfish purposes?
Yeah, I think that could be, sometimes if we are heading the wrong direction, I believe God will stop us or give us, no, don't go there type answers. Although I have met one guy, and he actually had the gift of seership. I don't think he used a stone, but he actually could resonate and find a lottery ticket. He's done it twice.
I think I remember you saying that somebody used a seer stone to see the devil.
Right. Now, in my dad's book, there was a good seer stone, and the story goes that he loaned it to somebody, just handed it to him, and the guy wanted to see the devil, and then he did see the devil, and then the stone never worked after that. And so, yeah, that's in my dad's Seer stone book.
Are you familiar with the idea of the Akashic records?
Right.
Do you think that might have anything to do with it?
That could be part of what they're talking with the stone.
So, in terms of receiving these records or revelation, do you think that it's just so hard to conjecture on what it is? Is it you're accessing memories from the collective unconscious, or pulling it from some different realm, or is it just revelation that something is giving to you? What do you think it is?
It could be all of those. Yeah, literally it could be all. I mean, why do I've seen the future, and why did I see the future? And that still works the same way with dreams. So dreams are almost that same way, and so sometimes dreams will catch into those records, or because we're all probably interconnected, and so maybe there's a friend that you feel is having a hard time or wants to die, and you have a dream about them, or you go to a seer stone and all of a sudden you see your friend. You're like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to call that person. I have that happen to me a lot, because I'll just be driving down the road and I'll just say, Lord, what do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do today? And then somebody will pop in my head. And then I'll call them, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you called me right now. This is the third time you've called me right when I'm depressed, or I, need your help, or whatever. And so that divine intervention can go really deep. It really can. And then I think as you start to tune in, you'll start feeling more and more of those feelings. And which leads to another thing, I believe that there's a lot of static in our air, like it used to not be. We have a lot of cell phone towers now. We have a lot of like chlorine, other things, the fluoride that's messing us up, it messes up our third eye. The boron can help with that, clean that up. We've had a lot of people, I gave a lecture once about that, and it helped a lot of people to see better and know better. And so I had a bad tooth one time, and I met a very spiritual man, and he told me that was causing me to not be in tune. And so we finally got tooth pulled, and then, I had dreams, like 10 dreams in one night.
Well, it's not just like a capacitor or a battery. I believe Joseph Smith got worn out after he used it for a while.
Yeah. Well, all revelation is that way. I was out working in a mine, and we're digging and doing all this, and while I was digging, I just looked up, and I think I may have told this story, but there was this Indian standing there in spirit form, and this Indian looks at me, and I kind of, in a mind-to-mind type thing, which happens on the other side, he said, well, I know your heart, and I know you're trying to do the right thing, but this isn't the time or the place, and you need to leave. And I said, well, what is your name? And then he told me Sam got Gooch, which there was a Gooch that lived here in town, and just figured that was his ancestor. But then he basically, after that kind of vision where I saw that, I went out and I leaned against the car because I was really kind of exhausted. It takes that energy out of you. And one of the other guys kind of through his eye, he saw the corner of his eye. He said he saw that individual too. We never went back. We just kind of done.
Well, on the idea that Joseph Smith moved his stone from underneath his mantelpiece, I was looking into it. It's Sally Chase. And the idea that Sally Chase introduced him to seer stones, but then tried to steal things that belonged to him, do you feel that there was an actual spiritual war going on?
Yeah, for sure. There's always a fight between good and evil. Always. There's always opposition in all things. There's opposition to the evil, there's opposition to the good. So we always see that kind of going back and forth.
Well, do you feel that people like Sally realize they're evil?
Sometimes, and sometimes not. Sometimes they think that they're doing the good thing, and that they're trying to, fight. Well, we got to get rid of this wicked person that's got our gold, or they think that it's their gold instead of, so they feel justified in that, or whatever. So.
And I guess on one more topic, the Bloodstone of Brigham Young. I'm hoping to go and see that. Do you know much about the backstory of the Bloodstone?
I don't know much of how he got it, but what's interesting is, as I've gone and talked to stone people, or people that know a lot about different, what this is for and what this does, and there's some really interesting new stuff that's come out. I had a friend that he had studied stones for years and felt them and done stuff, and he wrote a little book on it. But now there's a bigger book on crystals and also what different stones do for different things. In fact, my dad, for years, he had this little business where he sold stones, and they called them healing stones. And of course, he didn't really believe it, but he did know a lot of people who believed it. He says, I took that and put it near my heart, and it really helped resonate, calm things down. Rose quartz was one that I held some rose quartz around me, and it calmed my heart, calmed me down. So I definitely know they have frequencies, they have different abilities to do different things, and certainly if you're attuned to a certain rock, then you're going to have more. And a lot of people, even with emeralds and rubies and other types of things, they say that they bring certain channels in. On the concept of crystals, I was reading a report where a couple of people had analyzed them, and they said that they could, when they first were starting to use them for radios, I think Tesla even had made this statement that he heard voices as he was channeling, because in the old days they made these radios and they just poke it with a pen and then it would tune in, and that frequency would vibrate, and that would actually come out on a speaker, because that's how a speaker works. And I've made them before in electronics, and so And so they felt that there was dark spirits that they were hearing from that channel they were channeling into to where they could talk through that frequency or that crystal. And so sometimes when we see crystal balls, you know, with people working, it could be channeling dark spirits as well, you know, that talk through it. That was what their conclusion was, that it brought more dark than what I did. And I've never had real good luck with, you know, certain crystals. It just never felt comfortable with them.
So for the people watching this, trying to get into it, how would you say you would prevent something dark from appearing, or to prevent that from happening?
It may just happen. I mean, it's going to happen in life. You're going to have dark people come, you know, you're going to have, you know. And so the most important thing is to realize, you just follow your feeling. That was a dark spirit. That was a dark thing. I had a couple of those experiences when I was really trying to help somebody, and then something dark would come to try and get me to stop or scare me away from finishing. You know, I guess like Joseph, you know, he had the dark spirit come and attack him, you know, first, and then it goes. So it can go both ways. You really have to be kind of in tune, and usually it worked for me more when I had a purpose. I need to know where I lost my keys. I need to know where, or even one time I was like, how do I help my friend? I mean, there's got to be a way to help this individual, some medicine or something or whatever, and it was a kind of an Indian chap down the road, you know, that I went and talked to, and then he had some sort of a healing thing that helped my friend. So any of that could be appeared in future and past, and yeah.
In terms of using these stones, I've heard it a lot that the Urim and Thummim came from a breastplate. And that would seem to me, because you're saying hold it in your left hand or whatever hand works for you, but it could also work on a breastplate. Is there a specific method of using that you found works universally for everyone, or?
Usually just holding in your hand. And I've also seen people who hold it like this, or they'll like, when they say Joseph put it in his hat, you know, that's pretty close to the third eye, and so that could easily be what is happening. And so that's even some of the, you know, as I've looked at Egyptian stuff, they have certain stones, you know, in the top of their crown, and a lot of crowns had a lot of jewelry and a lot of different things, which may have been a method of helping them to think or concentrate or think in a different realm.
Well, a lot of those crowns, they also use crystals.
Sure.
Especially the more evil ones.
Right. Where the others would have rubies and emeralds and, you know, lesser of those types. So, yeah.
You've seen the $60
both.
million
Yeah.
on the Queen's crown, you know?
Right. Yep. Very interesting stuff. And I just think it's kind of working with it and praying. I had one gal, she'd pray over the stones, you know, every time she used it, you know, I don't want evil, I don't want this, I want to cast out whatever darkness is in there. She seemed to be very accurate with that. I'm certainly by not the best ever, you know. I looked at that one girl, I taught her, and she was way better than I. In 2 weeks' time, she just naturally picked up on it and had, you know, a very good discretion. And just don't give up. I mean, people give up too easy on everything, and that works with dreams too. So if you look at dreams and you say, how does a dream work? It works the same as a seer stone. And so some people take stones and keep them on them or around them, like the Native Americans keep a little pouch, and then make them dream better, you know, so they have better dreams. And one of the first things I did with dreams was to start keeping a dream journal, so you have a record of everything, and that's telling your subconscious that I'm watching, I'm listening now. And so your subconscious is going to start speaking more to you and having more dreams. Before I went to bed, I made sure that I could think about dreams as I'm going through it. I pretend like I was going to have a dream, or that I would start focusing on it and then go into that sleep, and then I always had dreams, always had. I mean, my whole mission, every single night I had a dream. And you know, and sometimes I haven't. I was around a very dark person once, but I think he was a 33rd degree Mason, and And as I was around that individual, I didn't have dreams. I was like, this is really weird. All my life I've had dreams. So I had to kind of isolate myself away from that individual. And it better. And there was a girl that came in not long ago, and she says, I never have dreams. I always have these really spooky, terrifying dreams that I'm dying or something. And I thought, that's kind of weird. And then she left. And then that night I had this dream where I'm in a Jeep with a friend, and we're ice fishing, and the Jeep goes down, and he drowns, and I get out. And it's like, why did that come from? And so I think it was just a dark spirit that was attached to her, you know, and it kind of jumped on me, you know, like, okay, go away, I don't want that. And I didn't have any more